Herbert is the Executive Vice President and Chief Credit Officer for City First Bank, one of the largest Black-led community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions in the country. With more than 20 plus years of experience, she has served in key leadership roles for most of her career, leveraging her expertise to direct enterprises in the strategic development and delivery of value-driven, user-friendly solutions in the commercial credit and financial services arena. Now, for the last 3 years, Shannan has focused on providing capital to under-resourced groups that have historically been denied access to funding. Her commitment to community development and small business lending has helped hundreds of small businesses that are minority-owned thrive. So we invited Shannan to talk about the small business matter of racial justice in small business lending. Shannan, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary.
You're very welcome. So the Federal Reserve Bank recently published the 2022 report on firms owned by people of color. And there was some very fascinating research here. One of the most interesting findings in the survey was the number of discouraged borrowers who did not apply for financial assistance because they didn't think that they would qualify. Shannan, when you see data like this and thinking about your own mission there, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's not surprising. Because as we see these data points here, we know that there are real stories behind each one of those data points. I can't tell you how many small business owners I know, Black-owned businesses, where they have completely checked out of the process, either through word of mouth or through previous bad experience, have decided that traditional bank financing just isn't for them. We saw this especially during PPP. I can't tell you the number of small businesses I had to convince to apply for PPP funding. Hey, this money is here available for you. Why don't you apply? And the response was, oh, well, they'll never approve me for that. Or, I don't understand. It's too complicated. And so, I think that we have a responsibility to help borrowers, especially navigate the process, but encourage them to apply if it means working capital funds for the business, helping the business scale. We can see these things. There have been some other studies done during the PPP era. Reveal News also did a study that showed that in metropolitan areas where populations were greater than 1 million, PPP loans were given out at higher rates in white majority areas when compared to Black and Latinx majority areas. NCRC also did similar research, National Community Reinvestment Coalition. They did similar research during PPP and found that with their mystery shoppers, that Black and Latinx mystery shoppers were given significantly less information about PPP loans when compared to white mystery shoppers. So, you have that disparity there too, where borrowers of color are coming to banks looking for information and not being able to obtain that information. We also know that 89% of new businesses are started by women of color, but minority entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, are twice as likely to be denied financing from a traditional bank or from a large bank. And part of that is that small business owners, Black small business owners, are less likely to have relationships with their banks. Less than 1 in 4 have a banking relationship. And so all of this is the story behind those data points that you have there that shows why so many Black small business owners have been discouraged from even participating in the process.
So can you tell us a little bit about Underwriting for Racial Justice and how the group got started?
Certainly. So I have to give a major shout out to the folks at Beneficial State Foundation. Our fearless leader, Erin Kilmer-Neal, who's their Chief Impact Officer, convened this group right before the pandemic started. And we actually started our work in 2021. And so what this is a group of really smart bankers, CDFIs, CDFI leaders, nonprofit loan funds, and nonprofit organizers that want to be involved and want to help, coming together to figure out what those barriers are to lending in BIPOC communities, to BIPOC small business owners, and figuring out how to eliminate those barriers. And so what we did was kind of level set in the beginning and go through just some of the historical relevance. Why are we all here? How did this start? How did we get to this place where we're talking about these things? Because we all have this goal of closing the racial wealth gap or eliminating the racial wealth gap. But are we doing it on a large scale? Are we doing it in very bite-sized pieces? Or how are we getting there? And then from there, what we did was look at what each of our banks were doing individually to address some of these disparities that we saw in lending. There was, with City First, we have a program called Unitranche, where we're able to lend up to 90% loan to value to supplement those borrowers that don't have the required equity investment. So we can lend up to 90%. And borrowers can come to the table with less. So that covers debt service coverage requirements, equity requirements, but really solves for that limited equity issue. There's another financial institution included that instead of having a traditional loan committee approval system, they use community members as their loan committee. So the community could weigh in on whether or not a business deserved financing based on their experience with that business in their community, right? Which makes a ton of sense if you're talking about community lending. If we're all sitting around the table and we're not from that community, it's kind of hard to make a decision about a business that is important or vital to a particular community. So that was another model that we explored. But it's been a great learning experience working with such smart people, such mission-oriented people looking to make deep impact in their communities.
It's important work. It's making a huge difference in so many people's lives and business owners' lives as well. When I was looking at the website, I did find this chart where you really broke this out into the areas of where you could respond in the 5 C's of credit. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what this is, really, it's the framework for inclusive underwriting, right? So when we think about inclusive underwriting, we think about access for all, equitable access for all. So basically recognizing where we have fallen short in the past, where bias may show up in some of our decision making, and trying to solve for that so that more people have access. We're not having the same issues that we highlighted in that first chart, but really focusing on those things that are part of the underwriting process, the prospecting, the relationship management, the approval process, all of it. And, and everyone understands the 5 C's. So, there's not, if you're a lender, you're not a lender, you're a borrower, everyone knows what the 5 C's are. So this is the easiest to kind of get to and break these down. For instance, when you think about character, right? How do you determine character? What data points are you using to determine character, and how much bias is creeping into that character assessment? Capital is another area, as I mentioned with the Unitranche product that we have at City First, but we have readily available data on racial wealth gap, on gender wage gap, but equity requirements are still the same across the board, irrespective of race and gender. So, how do we adjust for that? What do we do in our lending practices, in our policies, in our products to adjust for those disparities? Because we're not all starting at the same point on the field.
Well, it's clear from reading the most recent SBCS report on the firms owned by people of color that there's inequity in access to capital. It said that firms owned by people of color were about half as likely as white-owned applicants to receive all of the funding they sought. What do you think is going on here, Shannan?
Well, I think it goes back to that inclusive underwriting discussion and really understanding risk. All right. And so we have this perception of what risk is, but when you ask people where the data is to support some of those risk assessments, that hard data isn't readily available. And so a lot of it is perception. Some of it could be based on bias. But I think for us, it's about re-envisioning or reimagining risk and what that really looks like. Is a loan to a Black-owned business in a Black community riskier than a loan made to a white-owned business in a white community? So gathering that data to really say yes or no, that's the case, and then making those policy changes or product changes, whatever they may be, according to that data. But I think when we think about risk, changing the way that we think about it, and then the way that we are applying some of our standards and some of our policies to our underwriting practices could help in that area. But I think that could be what we're seeing there with those disparities.
Yes. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's been in the public lexicon for a few years now. And I'm glad that there's more discussion about that, and we want action happening. What's the difference between the work that you're doing and a typical DEI initiative?
Well, I think that, with the DEI initiatives, and I applaud so many organizations for even taking up that challenge and saying, yes, we recognize that we have a problem, and we're going to do everything that we can to solve for that problem. And solving for that problem meant hiring more diverse staff and diversifying boards and executive management levels, and all of that is wonderful. I think that what we're doing here is the what do we do now part, right? So you've put all these great people in place, but what's next? What's the next step? And so that's where this work gets to. It's what's the next step? How do we put these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in action? And this is the action. These are the actionable items that you can measure, right? So now I can see, all right, I'm lending, I can follow that money to see what happens with that money. I can see if there's wealth generation on the back end of that. I can see how communities are improving. I can see how many jobs are being created. I can see all of these things and follow that money along the way. And that's measurable. That's measurable DEI all day long.
It's really important. It's really important. So what have been some of the most significant learnings from the group thus far?
Well, I think it's, for me, it made me feel like I wasn't on an island. Hearing some of the stories from some of the other bankers and the challenges that they had, it created a community grounded in this fight for racial equity in lending. I said I've been a banker for more than 20 years, and there was a lot that I just didn't know. And that was something that I had to reconcile with. But the more I learned, I couldn't sit there and not do anything. You see something, it's like, oh, wait, I need to dig a little deeper. And what does this mean? And how do we fix this? And I think that's what it's been for all of us. Once we hear the stories, we see some of the creative things that are being done on a small scale, but they're being done. It means that we can do it too.
Yes. So what is the special purpose credit program? It's currently under development. And how can that help firms owned by people of color?
Yeah, so what we decided after we went through all of the history and the case studies and learning from one another, we decided that we would put together our own special purpose credit program. And what we wanted to do was create really a comprehensive program for lenders that not only included the program itself, but training on the front end. So inclusive underwriting training, as I just mentioned and kind of walk through a little bit, but inclusive underwriting training to really look for the bias as it shows up in all of those areas from start to finish, from prospecting to approval to relationship management. Because we have to make sure that those that are involved in this program have that same understanding that we had when we first walked into the program that Aaron and the folks at Beneficial created. So having that training on the front end, the product itself, and that's what's in development right now. So you have the product itself, then the policy. So we have to make sure that loan policies are still tracking to this program that's being created. And we would provide that help to bankers that are looking to have their policies enhanced with this special purpose credit program language. Regulator support, very important for those banks that are regulated. The regulators are in support of the use of special credit purpose programs. So this isn't something new. This is something that the regulators have been supportive of. And we want to make sure, though, that as we're designing this, we're not running afoul of any regs, and that when it's exam time, that regulators come in and they're comfortable with what has been implemented. So we've had some great success talking with the regulatory agencies around this concept, and we'll continue to keep them in the loop as we build. And then the last part of it is the community advisory. So going back to one of the examples that we had during our case study, having a community voice as part of this process, having an advisory group in your particular community that can provide that letter of reference for your borrower, that can say, oh, these are the places where you should be looking for business, for diverse business, so having that sounding board, someone that is on the ground, connected to the community, that can inform some of the decisions being made with the larger group. That's the last piece of it.
That's awesome. Well, Shannan, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today and hearing about the work that you're doing. It's so exciting. It's transformative. And we need to do all that we can to spread that message. Where can our listeners find more information about Underwriting for Racial Justice?
Absolutely. They can go to the Beneficial State Foundation webpage, and there is a link there for Underwriting for Racial Justice, and you can click through. And I'm certain that Erin's contact information is listed there. If you can't find her there, you can always contact me via LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and your passion for change, Shannan.
Thank you so much, Gary.